For over 100 years, Rotary members have taken action when challenges arise. We know what people can do when they come together and put others before themselves.
The team lead said they will continue the campaign to fight against the coronavirus.
Local Rotary clubs deliver food and supplies to people in need.
Strangers become friends, helping hands multiply, and problems turn into solutions. We are Rotary. We are people of action. Learn more at rotary.org/action.
Every Rotary project anywhere in the world always started out with one person who had an idea. And then they were able to grow and develop that idea by getting other Rotarians engaged and using that powerful network of Rotary to really change the world.
I want to make a difference, and I see Rotary as being the best vehicle worldwide to be able to make a difference to the community as a citizen of the world.
It's always a blessing to give back what you have received. Rotary is just a sweet place to be. The fellowship, the ability to serve. It's not about how old you are or how much you have.
We don't have to be Prime Minister to lead our country. Even one Rotarian can do lots of things.
People want to feel involved, and that's how they feel that they're actually contributing and giving something back to the society.
Every Rotarian's needs are different. And if we don't know what their needs are, then how are we going to fulfill them?
Right after someone gets in Rotary, you have to start fostering the opportunity for them to take a leadership role, whether they choose to or whether the club chooses them to.
Leader is a role model of everybody.
If you've got the heart, you're going to take your club forward in some fashion. And that's what it's really all about, all of us working together.
Teaching, leading, and then transferring the responsibility of what we are doing to them. The rewards are huge. The satisfaction's enormous. I'm very proud to be a Rotarian.
Family of Rotary, hello and welcome. My name is Stephanie Yurchik, International Director for Zones 33 and 34. Today we present our fourth seminar on career development strategies, so you want to be your own boss. These seminars are part of Rotary Works, a Zone 33 and 34 program for Rotarians and Rotaractors. Currently, many of us may be in challenging and uncertain work situations. Perhaps we've lost a job, or are underemployed, or our industry has been impacted by the pandemic, or maybe we've been looking to make a career transition. Rotary Works offers professional and skill development seminars, coaching, mock interviewing, connecting, resources, a place to post and to find job opportunities, and a unique one-time grant opportunity for those experiencing financial stress due to a career transition. You can learn more by visiting our website, rotary.works. You'll be redirected to the Zones 33 and 34 site, where you can learn more about this initiative. I imagine many of you, whether working in the corporate world or for business or nonprofits, have at some point thought, you know what, I can do what these people do. I should launch my own business. You think about the money you could make, the flexibility to do what you want, when you want, the opportunity to walk away from all those hassles in your current position. Well, think long and think hard. The numbers vary based upon the source, but generally speaking, about 30% of new businesses don't survive the first year. 50% don't survive 5 years. Maybe you think those aren't bad odds. I could be in the 70% that do make it in the first year. What these numbers don't highlight are those things that keep us up in the middle of the night. Money, finding the right audience, money, developing the right marketing to get to that audience, money, acts of God that you don't control, inflation that you don't control, government changes and regulations that you don't control. Well, you get the picture. It can be a great gig or it can be a disastrous one. Today, we have 3 knowledgeable professionals who have direct experience and will share their insights and recommendations on building your own business. A longtime human resources professional, Rich Salon is known to most as Rich the HR guy. Rich has held leadership roles at the Home Depot, Circuit City, Penske, and Lowe's, and holds the highest level professional certifications in the human resources field. He is currently an employee relations consultant with a Texas-based human resources consulting firm, HR Sanity. He's also a career transitions coach, where he helps people with their job search and matches others to business opportunities through his own company, Business Ownership Connection. He is a member of the Rotary Club of Goochland, Virginia, and a proud Rotarian of 5 years. A Rotarian with experience in multiple clubs since 1993, Doug Wolf is presently a member of the Morehead City Noon Rotary Club in North Carolina and immediate past district governor of District 7730. Doug spent his career managing customer service organizations. He has managed hotels in the Caribbean and across the United States and taught hospitality management at Carteret Community College. Doug and his wife, Jane, also owned and operated DG's Gifts and Books, a landmark store on the Morehead City waterfront, a business that started in 1934. Terry Weaver is a veteran of corporate America, where he was president of a public company with more than 10,000 employees. Looking for life after big companies, He started an IT services business in 1997, which he ultimately sold in 2003. He has since bought and sold a CEO peer advisory business and started a business coaching practice as a part-time encore career. He has helped his business coaching clients build tens of millions of dollars in wealth through their companies over the past 17 years. Terry is a member of the Rotary Club of Greenville, South Carolina, a past governor of District 7750, the district trainer, and the district innovative club advocate. Today's program will be jam-packed with great information. If you have questions you'd like to pose to any of our presenters, please use the chat box at the bottom of your screen or at the top if you're on an iPad, and we'll address them during the Q&A portion after the presentation. So Terry, let's start with you, and perhaps you can give us your insights into being your own boss.
Thank you, Stephanie. We're here today to talk about entrepreneurship, subtitled The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. There's some prerequisites for someone thinking about buying or starting a business. I'd like to walk through those with you. First of all, this requires an incredible amount of passion and something that you're passionate about as far as the core of the business is concerned. And if it's business to business, make sure it's something that either increases revenue or reduces cost or time. I was taught this by an angel investor once. He said, don't come to me with an investment in a business that doesn't increase revenue for the customer or reduce cost or time. So just like the electronics business, it's better, faster, cheaper. You need to have your spouse on board or anyone else that's a big influence in your life. You also need some alternate sources of cash flow. Could be investments in net worth, but you'll need groceries. You'll need mortgage payments. You'll need rent money while this thing is starting up. Now, one piece of advice I give to anyone who's employed and thinking about starting a business is keep that day job. Hold on to that day job, which provides groceries and rent, and get your business started on the side, nights and weekends, and test out your product theories and make some sales, make some calls. That it capitalizes on an existing trend. Don't try to start a business and also start a market. You want to be sure that you're selling something that at least people know they need, or they can understand that they need after you've told them about the product or service. And then that it's something you know how to do, something you've done before, or done something very similar on somebody else's nickel. And that you know where and how you're going to get somebody to help you with this. Finally, that it has leverage. Now, we usually talk about leverage in terms of capital, meaning I take some borrowed money that I'm paying a low interest rate for, I invest it in something with a much higher return. But leverage in a business also applies to people and products. You don't want to be just selling your own heartbeats. You want to be leveraging some margin on products that you buy for $100 and sell for 150, or people that you buy for 125. So make sure that the business model is more than just self-employment, meaning basically selling your own time. Now, there's nothing wrong with self-employment. This little encore career I have, no bones about it. It's purely self-employment. I'm selling myself and my own time and knowledge to my customers. There's no more to it than that, but that won't build wealth. That won't build you something that you can later sell to someone else for a great improvement in value. And you want something where increasing revenue doesn't take proportionally more effort on your part. In other words, you can grow the business 10% without working 10% harder, or 1,000% without working 1,000% harder. Now let's talk about business models for just a second. I've become more of a student of those, and they're really a key to success. So look at the business model. I'm no fan of business models that require a lot of fixed investments, a lot of capital, particularly rolling stock, inventory, etc. I have a client, for example, who has a business model where every time he gets enough more business in the door that he needs more capacity, he hires another guy and buys another truck. Wow. $35,000. Not only that, those trucks wear out. So there's a continuous replace sort of thing. It's a really, really tough business model that he's chosen. Much better something that has no inventory, something that has little or no fixed investment. And I'm also not a huge fan of brick and mortar retail. That used to be a pretty good business model, but it's a business model that's significantly in jeopardy right now. That you have the skills, the emotional resources, the personality profile, that you have simply the tenacity and the relentlessness to put a business together. A business is started and brought into existence through sheer force of will of the founder. That you're able to and willing to be the company's lead salesperson. I just brought on a new business coaching client. He told me when he introduced me in our first call, introduced himself to me in our first call, he said, "We're not salespeople." I said, "Get over it." I don't know of a business between $1 million and $20 million in revenue where the owner or founder is still not the lead salesperson. Now, you need more feet on the street than just yourself, but when it comes to closing the big deal, you're the person. So let's talk about the business premise for a moment. And to talk about the business premise, I want to bring on my friend, somebody I've worked with a lot in Zone 33, Doug Wolf.
Thank you, Terry, and thank you, Stephanie. The business premise: to get going in your business, you have to have a large set of self-referencing prospects with the same problem. You have to know who the first 50 people is you're going to call on, not just 10 people, not just a dozen people. You want to have 50 people written down and the reason that you're calling on them. You need some kind of script. How are you going to present this? And don't count on positive feedback from your friends. Your friends are going to tell you what they think you want to hear. You need to practice your script on potential clients or others who are not afraid to tell you, "That stinks. I think you need to revise this, that, and the next thing." Critical component: the main document you're going to use as you go into this is a business plan. The business plan has several major areas. Most importantly is revenue. How much money are you going to be bringing in from sales of whatever product or service your company is doing? Then from there, you deduct costs. Each unit you sell costs you some amount of money to produce, whether it's a service or a hard tangible object. So obviously those costs of goods sold vary with your revenue. The more you sell, the more your costs will be. And the difference between those two is the margin. That's sort of the start of where you go. But beyond the margin, then you have to deduct your overhead, your fixed costs of doing business. That might include rent and other kinds of things. And the difference of those two is your net operating income, otherwise known as your profit. Another critical component to getting started is cash. You're going to need a lot of cash right up front to use as working capital and also to purchase or start renting whatever fixed assets, things that you need to make this business work. Now, before you jump in with both feet and commit half your life and lots of your money, I would strongly advise that you spend a couple hours researching this, and a couple of good books about how-to for planning new businesses. Michael Gerber has written a series of books called The E-Myth, and there are several different titles in his series. And then there's a book by Jeffrey Fox, How to Make Big Money in Your Own Small Business. Additional resources for you to help and sort of give you opinions on this is your local chapter of SCORE. SCORE is a national organization, stands for Service Corps of Retired Executives, and they are exactly what that sounds like. Former business leaders who are eager and happy to consult with you and help you develop a solid business plan and help you with your business startup. Also, in many communities, there are things like a small business development center. It may have a different name, but in North Carolina, those are all affiliated with the community colleges, and they have trained experts who are there free of charge to you to give you advice and help you prepare your business plan, help you get started in your business. And there are also business incubators, which is a physical space that you apply to and are allowed to keep your business in that space for some short period of time, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it might be. And they provide communal services for everybody, heat, light, and power, copy machines, telephone services, et cetera, et cetera. To put your business plan together, it's ultimately just a document that it has a whole bunch of numbers in it and text written about all those numbers. There is software available online now. One brand is called Business Plan Pro. There are many others. We're not recommending any particular one, but those you enter all your numbers one time and one time only, and it helps A, prepare the document, and B, cut down on silly errors as you're entering great, huge, long strings of numbers 4, 5, and 6 different times. Capital, do you have any, or do you have enough? You'll need initial assets like an office equipment, inventory. You may need vehicles depending on the business, et cetera, et cetera. Accounts receivable is money owed to you from people that you've sold your product to, and that will gradually build to the point where you've got a steady stream of money coming in the door regularly from your sales. In my case, it was a retail business, so we didn't have any accounts receivable. We collected cash from customers each day. But immediately it'll be 30, 45, 60 days before you start seeing any significant amount of accounts receivable money coming in. And as Terry mentioned, you're still got to live. You've got to have a place to live, a vehicle. You've got to buy clothes and food and take care of children and all the other normal life stuff. So don't count on the business generating any cash for you to use for at least a year. You'll need to set up vendor agreements with the people that are supplying you with various goods and services. You'll have office expenses, travel, benefits. You got to pay taxes, all those kinds of things. And how soon will you need help? Once you start needing help, you've got to figure out salaries and benefits for the employees that you bring on board. Places you can get capital, first and foremost, is your own money. Anybody who's serious about loaning you money is going to want to know how much of your own money is involved in your project. Because if you're not investing in it, there's no reason they would feel like they should invest. So you can use your own investments, you can use cash, you can use a home equity line if that's available to you. You can borrow money from others, and others might include friends and family and fools. That fools is there deliberately. You may be able to borrow from your own personal credit cards, but by all means avoid tapping your qualified retirement plans like an IRA or a 401k. Those are what's going to get you through the last 20 or 30 years of your life, and you don't want to jeopardize that now by taking the money out. If you take money out of them, generally you owe taxes and often penalties. And credit, are you bankable? Be checking your own credit score and be prepared to personally guarantee loans from people. A personal guarantee is better than using your own money, but it also might mean that you could lose your house or lose other significant investments of your own if your business is not successful. The business hopefully will start generating a cash flow, positive cash flow coming into the business, but don't expect any money for the first at least 3 months and probably more likely 6 months. You'll need people to help you as your business grows. Partners can be a great source of help, and you want to look for a partner who is complementary to your skills. So if you're a salesperson, you might want a partner who's an operations person, can crunch the numbers and figure out the logistics. You want to be sure that your spouse or significant other can work with this partner, because trust me, the 3 of you are going to become very good friends over the years. A partner can be a great source of help and support, but before you sign on the dotted line, you need to get a solid buy-sell agreement. That's a professionally prepared document, typically by an attorney, and that details exactly what will happen when one or the other partner is no longer willing or able to continue the business relationship. You want to be sure that you know in advance what will happen to the business if one or the other of you decides to leave that business. So get a good attorney and work on that. You want a leadership team. You don't necessarily at the beginning know individuals' names, but you know you might need a merchandise manager or a product manager or a warehouse manager or whatever it might be. So start putting together an organization chart of job descriptions. You'll need employees at some point. So how are you going to get them? Where will you find those employees? What skills do they need before they come on board? How much are you going to be paying them? All of those kinds of things are important. Some employees, some businesses give stock in the company to their employees. I would strongly urge you not to do that for at least 5 years into your new business startup. And if you do start thinking about that, get some good, honest financial advice from other people that are qualified to know about that, because employee shareholders can be a very difficult situation, and you need to be sure that you're going to set that up right. You may want to set up an advisory board. This is different than a board of directors. A board of directors can tell you exactly what you should do. An advisory board is just there for advice. And you don't want the advisory board to be made up of your sister and brother-in-law kind of people. You want honest people that know the business, know your area, know your market, and can give you solid advice. You might want to meet with them once a month or once a quarter, and they can help you solve problems as well as give you advice on potential future growth of your company. If anybody does invest with you, you need to have a written plan to buy them out, because at some point you either might want them out of the business or they might decide they want out of your business. So have that written down and planned out in advance so that as people want their money back, you're not suddenly scrambling to find however much money they'd loaned you. So it all comes down to why and why not. If you go and do this, you'll be your own boss. You set the rules, you decide what's good, what's bad, how much you're going to be working. Well, the business will decide how much you're going to be working, trust me. The bad news is you'll realize that being your own boss is truly a 24/7, 365 business. Stephanie mentioned waking up in the middle of the night worrying about money. That is absolutely real. At some point, you're going to realize you've risked everything you own. You truly don't have two nickels to rub together. And that's a very scary position to be in. And realize that it's a jungle out there. There's lots of other people selling the same product you're selling, and everybody's competing for a relatively limited market. And finally, the international travel you dreamed about probably doesn't include 17 hours crammed into a coach seat on an airplane heading to Asia to buy some merchandise. So I want to leave you with a quote from a man who describes himself as a serial entrepreneur. And he said, working at a startup is incredibly hard. If you're in it just because of the allure, the money, or the press, that's a terrible reason to start a company. I tell people to dig into their motivations deeply and figure out what's driving them before they dive in. That's great advice. And I leave you today. I thank you for being on the call, and I'm happy to answer questions later. Back to you, Terry.
Thanks so much, Doug. Really some sage advice and things to watch for and things to look out for in there. I'd like to talk with you about how you form this up as an organization. The easiest and not recommended way to do that is as a sole proprietorship. It flows through your tax return. You collect money, you spend money, there's some left over, you make some profit. But the problem with the sole proprietorship is that there's no barrier between that business and your assets, your net worth, which means anything that happens in the business, any possible lawsuit, any possible business failure, any possible creditor issues, those reach right back into your own checking account and your own brokerage account. So better to set up something like a limited liability company. It is the simplest, and for most startups, I think the best corporate form. It's relatively simple, costs less than $1,000 to set up an LLC with the legal work. And of course, that If you're going to have other members of your LLC, other owners, you'd have the buy-sell agreement built into what's called the operating agreement of the LLC. It looks and acts like an S corp, but it's taxed like a partnership, meaning that you and the other owners don't get a salary. You rather get a cash distribution out of the business of net income, net profit. You're also liable for the income taxes at ordinary income rates on that same net profit, depending on how you allocate it to each other, which in an LLC does not have any rules. You can allocate 20% of ownership to somebody else, and you can allocate them 40% of the net income cash flow if you wish. An S corporation, on the other hand, is more restrictive. It requires a little bit more record keeping, has a few more rules, but you're selling actual shares of stock. And for an employee-owned business, if you don't have employee owners in a business, this is really probably a better approach. An S corp means that those employees own a share of the business, as do you and perhaps your primary partner or other shareholder, if that's the case. The thing about an S corp, however, is that you will have a salary. You'll get a W-2 just like everybody else, as would your partner, if that were the case. And it also means that when you distribute the net income after that, the cash distribution after that, that has to be distributed along the same lines as the ownership. So the same percentages of stock ownership, you have to distribute the excess cash, the net income, if you will, the same way. Now, I'd also point out that that net income, unlike an LLC, is not subject to FICA. It's not subject to FICA or Medicare taxes, so it is a bit of a savings. If you pay yourself moderately as an S corp proprietor, it's a bit of a savings from a tax point of view. Then there's a C corporation. I can't see, personally, would never recommend that somebody start up a business as a C corp unless they intended big time to be taking on sizable shareholders from outside. The thing about a C corp is that all public companies are C corps. So if you invest in General Motors, for example, when they send you a dividend, you're responsible only for the taxes on that dividend. It doesn't matter to you that they made money, they lost money. That has no effect on you whatsoever. If you get a dividend in cash, you are the government roughly 20% dividend tax on that. Likewise, capital gains are taxed the same way. So a C corp is a good way that you can meter out the profit distributions to your shareholders in the form of dividends. And of course, they're responsible then for taxes only on those dividends they actually get. My suggestion is you figure all these things out and then work out the nuts and bolts later. The nuts and bolts are things like finding an attorney to set up your LLC or your S corp, finding a CPA to help advise you in that process, acquiring the permits, fees, and licenses. Probably a local business license is kind of the minimum. Do check into your state Secretary of State website and see what the business license provisions are in your particular state or municipality. You need a business bank account, always separate from your personal account. And one of the things that I did shortly after setting up a business bank account, I started my first business with about $40,000 of my own money. So it was an IT services business. I bought a little bit of furniture. I bought some Dell laptops for my billable resources and various other things, some brochures and some business cards and all that sort of stuff. But then I immediately got a line of credit because I had good credit. I had net worth that I was able to guarantee that line on, meaning that I didn't have to throw more money in there. If, for example, we came up a little short on receivables that month and I had a payroll that I was going to be a couple $1,000s short on, I could just hit that line literally for a few days and then pay it right back off. You'll need a website. You'll need a URL. You need that same domain for your email. Don't be ajaxelectronics@gmail.com. Be jim@ajaxelectronics.com. So you want to check and see as you're branding your company, is the URL available that is consistent with your business name? When I set up Delta Resource Group, believe it or not, deltaresourcegroup.com was available as a URL. Now, that was in the early 2000s. I was able to grab that and was able to use that literally as my domain name. Or you can put a domain name in place that talks about what you do. I have a friend that's a process server. He delivers subpoenas all over the state of South Carolina. He owns weservepapers.com. Wow, what a great domain name. I have a friend in Ohio that makes padlocks. He owns padlocks.com. Super and valuable over time. And of course, you need a physical location in most cases. Now, you could do this as a home-based business, but shared services office suites are really the sweet spot for a startup business. You rent basically a 10 by 10 office space, and you've got a front desk, somebody that answers your phone with your name. You've got a place to go. You've got a shared conference room where you can have meetings. But really a good solution for a startup business. I'd recommend shared service office suites. You need to know what you're doing and why. It's a business that you know about, that you don't have to learn on your own dime. You've learned this on someone else's nickel, and you know who you're doing it with. If you plan to have partners or investors, it's people you know. And of course, service providers. Now, service providers are really, you may not know those, but you probably have people in your network that can refer you to an insurance agent, a CPA, an attorney, and so forth. And then, of course, if you're thinking about scaling this business quickly, have some people in mind maybe that you might want to hire or would have an interest in working for you, or perhaps have worked for you before in the larger organization that you left. And as all of us have said, don't count on your friends for advice. Your friends may or may not, your friends hopefully will remain your friends, but they may or may not be qualified and competent business advisors. In most cases, as Doug suggested, they'll probably tell you what they think you want to hear rather than what they really mean. Play to win. Don't play to decide. This is all in. If you're going to do this, it's all in. Now, the caveat there is if you're experimenting with this thing on the side while you've still got your day job, then you've got a fallback position. But once you cut that cord, once you start putting 5-figure, 6-figure sums into a business, you want to be playing to win. All out, no holds barred. Failure is not an option. So what I'd like to do now is introduce another friend that I've met through Rotary Works, actually. Rich Salon is an expert in franchising. He's been involved directly, personally in franchising, and he's here to tell you about the franchise option.
Thank you, Terry. And Rotarians and Rotaractors, it is great to see you again. And I have to tell you, I feel like I am in the presence of Rotary royalty with past District Governor Doug Wolf, past District Governor Terry Weaver. These guys are awesome business professionals, and they're pretty good Rotarians as well. So let's talk about franchising. What is franchising? Franchising is a duplication of a successful business model. A franchisor licenses its know-how, its procedures, brand, and rights to sell its products and services to a franchisee. The franchisee invests in a system to utilize that brand name, the operating system, and ongoing support. Today, we estimate there are 750,000 franchise operations in the United States currently, employing about 7.6 million people. So it is a big part of our economy. And a lot of those franchise operations don't employ anybody. They just have the franchisee, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. Current estimates indicate there are approximately 3,800 to 4,000 different franchise organizations available in the United States. So the selection is quite large. Let's talk about some of the types and categories of franchises. For starters, there's business-to-business franchises. Then there's business-to-consumer franchises. Some people have a preference. Brick and mortar. Brick and mortar's been around for a long time. Your restaurants, retail, franchises that require an office might require a warehouse. And then you have the home-based models. I work with over 500 companies today, and I estimate about half of them work out of the home. We have this thing called computer, cell phone, Panera, meet them at their office, meet them at Starbucks. So the concept of doing business from the home is absolutely incredible. And from the price standpoint, for investment, it's apples and oranges. Brick and mortar franchises are way more expensive than a home-based model. And the categories continue to grow. I'll just give you some of the examples of the categories, franchises. There's home improvement, senior services, business services, staffing, personal care, hair care, fitness, coaching, property management. For pet lovers, there's a host of pets franchises, children's education, and a variety of cleaning franchises. Are there advantages and disadvantages of buying a franchise? Absolutely. Let me comment on a couple of the advantages. It's a proven business model. The brand name and recognition are already in place. It's a profitable business model. Structure and training are already in place. And the franchisor partnership, working closely with the franchisee, to me is the secret sauce to make the business unit successful. Again, you're not having to reinvent the wheel. You're duplicating a proven, profitable business model. Another advantage is the business is up and running quickly, thanks to proven startup processes. Disadvantages of buying a franchise, absolutely. For starter, there's like employment, like consulting, business ownership, there are no guarantees. Selection, which we'll talk about in a minute, is absolutely vital. But two disadvantages I want to talk about. One is restrictions on creativity, since franchisees must uphold the brand guidelines. The ability to make major wholesale changes often not going to happen too often in franchising. The other disadvantage is royalty payments by the franchise organizations will be mandated. It's typically 5% to 9% is what you're paying for that proven business model, profitable business model, the brand, the name, the training, the support, and everything goes along with it. So when somebody decides, I should look into franchising, okay? Selecting the right franchise is like selecting the right job, the right category to go into. It is a deep dive. Here's some of the categories that people typically look at. Personal interests of the category. What are their hobbies? Business skills and strengths that the franchise candidate wants to utilize. They need to think about home-based, or can they do a brick and mortar, or do they want to do a brick and mortar? Some prefer a large staff, small staff. I have candidates that tell me, Rich, find me one with no staff. I want to be chief cook and bottle washer. That's okay. The candidate has to determine what level do they want to be involved. And lastly, they need to take a good hard look at themselves and ask, what's important? Income, lifestyle, equity. Income, money they can make immediately and ongoing, lifestyle when they want to run the business, and equity, something they can sell when they want to turn the business in or retire. Now, the franchise evaluation process, we call it the validation process in the franchise industry. Multiple steps involved. It typically takes about 8 to 10 weeks. The candidate is in the learning mode for a long time. They are not in the buying mode for quite some time. Again, multiple steps, very, very, very thorough. And for the person who feels they want to look at franchising, there's two methods to approach it. They can go direct and start shopping on the internet and calling any one or multiple franchise organizations. Remember, there's 3,800 to 4,000 to choose from. Other people will go to a business ownership coach, also called a franchise consultant. And that franchise consultant is rarely paid anything by the candidate. Why? The franchise companies pay the coach a referral fee. In using a coach or direct, the total investment, franchise fees are the same to the penny, with or without business ownership coach. The price is always the price. Franchising is heavily regulated, and the price is always the price. There's no cost savings for working with a coach to help you find the right business model. Business ownership coach's role is to save candidates months or years of research, resulting in savings in time, money, and aggravation. Hey, it's great to be with you guys again. I'm turning it back to past District Governor Terry Weaver.
Thanks, Rich. Great information about an important strategy for finding or starting a business, doing it on somebody else's know-how rather than having to figure it out all by yourself. I want to talk about your primary strategies as an individual in this. As a business owner, what I encourage you to do is identify your highest and best use and do only those things. Identify your highest and best use, which at the outset is getting business. At the outset, it's generating revenue, it's rainmaking, finding customers, finding revenue, getting things up and running, and getting bills out and cash in. Stick to only those activities. Outsource or delegate everything else. Payroll, for example. I would never do my own payroll. I've been paying somebody to do my payroll for over 20 years. I currently have only 2 employees in this little encore career I'm in. I still use a payroll service. I wouldn't waste my time on that. Don't get mired in the details. Don't get mired in picking all the colors on the website or the Facebook page. Again, you can hire people for very little money to do some of those kinds of things for you. And start practicing this skill right away. Get the big stuff figured out before you get entangled in the details of your startup, and find other people to do any part of this that you possibly can, sticking with your highest and best use, which is figuring out the business model, the business strategy, and going out and finding some customers. Folks, I got to recommend this. Despite the fact that we set out to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, entrepreneurship is great. And you may see if you fit this mold. I asked a friend one time, Frank, why did you start your consulting business like 4 years out of college? And Frank said, because I didn't know any better. That's answer number one you get from business startups. And the second is, I wasn't that good of an employee. You may be better off running the show than following the show. But it's an extraordinary sense of accomplishment to build something that's really a reflection of yourself, your skills, your talents, and your insights. It is the backbone of the American economy. And that's one of the reasons that during COVID, small business has gotten so much attention with respect to stimulus and so forth. It's one of the tax advantages that came along with the Trump tax bill, was focused on pass-through corporations like S-Corps and LLC forms. So everybody recognizes that most of the jobs in the United States and most of the new companies are created from an entrepreneurship. It's a great financial opportunity. You can make a lot of money. You can generate current income. You can also build substantial net worth. If you build a business that somebody else will want to buy because it generates cash over time, you'll have a substantial opportunity to take a nice pop at the end game that may be 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now when you sell this to somebody else. It's like buying a franchise, only they're buying your business and they're buying everything that goes along with it. So what we'd like to do now is take your questions. We've been monitoring those in the chat as we came along. And my friend Claudia Myrtle is going to be moderating those. Rich and I will be, and Doug will be on camera fielding the questions. Claudia, what do you have for us?
Well, thank you. You guys did just a great job. The first question is, how did each of you begin your career? And we'll start with Terry, go to Rich, and then Doug. How did each of you begin your career?
Well, I began my career in technical sales. I had had sales experience when I was in college and developed some good skills, decided I wanted to do that. And as a result of that, climbed quickly up through that corporation. I was the youngest branch manager ever in the history of that company, the youngest regional manager, and the youngest vice president in the history of that company. So I started in selling, and you probably recognize some of those basic tendencies in some of my comments.
Perfect. Thank you. Rich?
My last semester in college, I had one elective course to burn, and I found it in the catalog, you know, that big thick catalog, this course called Personnel Management. I said, this looks kind of interesting. Love the course, got an A, and told myself, that's what I want to do. And I started in store management in operations, and then got the call to join human resources. And it's been a terrific career as Rich, the HR guy.
Thank you. Doug?
My job all through college was working in the campus bookstore, and I really loved that. And my first serious job after I graduated from college was working for Walden Books. They were headquartered about 10 miles from my home. That was a national bookstore chain in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, since gone out of business. But I started out as a store manager and worked my way up through the ranks in several different jobs with them. And the retail store we bought in North Carolina was a part bookstore and part gift shop, very much a tourist business located right on the Morehead City waterfront. And we were open 12 hours a day, 7 days a week from Memorial Day to Labor Day. And you couldn't fit another toothpick into that building each night after everybody'd finished dinner. They'd all come shopping with us. So it was great fun. We had a ball and sold it, and the business is still in operation today.
Perfect. Thank you. The next question is for each of you as well. How did you know that you wanted to own your own business? And we'll do in the same order. Terry?
Well, I grew up in the back of my dad's hardware store. I watched entrepreneurship up close and personal from literally age 7 up. And of course, that's probably how I ended up in engineering school as well. I spent a lot of time learning how to fix bicycles and lawnmowers. But I had always had an interest in being in my own business. And through my corporate life, I kind of looked at that sort of longing, if you will. But I didn't have a business premise in mind. I didn't have a business premise that I thought was leverageable and scalable enough to really meet my income objectives and the skill set that I had until I moved to South Carolina. And I moved into a community, Greenville, South Carolina, probably the easiest place to start a business in the world, that was built on entrepreneurship going back 200 years. And I met a whole bunch of people that had been there, done that. I didn't know any of those folks in my corporate life. And that's really what it was. I developed a network of other people who had done this, knew how to do it, and they helped me do it.
Great, thank you.
So in 2009, I was on the corporate staff of Circuit City, and unfortunately, we had to declare liquidation. And I was asked to stay on a bit and close down the DCs, close down the service centers. Okay. Then I was asked to kickstart the job search for the 34,000 team members nationwide. And I put my own job search on hold so I could focus on the 34,000. And I had the opportunity to tell every corporation in America that their responsibility to their team members does not end when they announce liquidation. Because back in early 2009, the gold standard was you went in front of your team members and you said, we're sorry, we're going out of business. We'll start looking for a new job, and we'll try not to screw up your W-2 and you get it in the mail next year. That was all anybody did. So I did some very, very unique, innovative things. I was named Area of the Economy that year by CNN for my work. But what it did for me, it created a second career calling. Not just Rich, the HR guy in corporate America, help people with their career search. So fast forward to 2015, one of my observations was not everybody wants to get back into a job. Many people want to become their own boss. Many people have come to say to themselves, you know, my knowledge is high, my skills are high, my confidence is high. I think it's time that I bet on myself instead of another employer. And the problem with me then, I couldn't help them. I could not help people become their own boss. It just wasn't space I played in. So I learned about this opportunity to become a business ownership coach and the ability to match people to franchises and have a portfolio of over 500 companies to match them to, working with people nationwide. And it fit. So that's when I opened up Business Ownership Connections, so I can continue to help the job seekers. I can help the people who want business ownership. And I can still help the people who want to pursue consulting. So that's how I got involved.
Thank you. Doug?
My wife Jane and I met at Walden Books. She was working in the office. She was a corporate accountant, and she and I have very good complementary skills. We both enjoy doing things that the other one can't stand doing, so that worked out well. Fast forward to the late 90s, and I'd been working as a hotel manager for about 10 or 12 years. I was with a national chain, and the founder of that company had passed away, and his widow decided after 4 or 5 years that she wanted to sell the business. So they brought in one of those corporate axe-cutting guys who went through the whole business, and at my level and the level immediately above me, they laid off more than half of that total and flattened it into one layer of supervisory management. So I got laid off because I had less seniority than people on either side of me geographically. So we started looking to buy a business. We'd both grown up on the ocean and knew we wanted to get back near the water. We were in Charlotte, North Carolina at the time, and started going to the various coastal areas looking, and this bookstore just fell into my lap because somebody'd seen my bookstore resume items, and the coincidences were just eerie. The man and his wife who were selling the store had grown up with the man who was the pastor of my church in Connecticut. Very unusual name. And he said the name one day, and I said, "Holy cow, are you talking about this guy?" And he said, "Yeah." So they'd been friends for years. And their daughter was working for Walden Books in Connecticut, and I had trained her on how to become a store manager. So the four of us just sort of decided this was meant to be, and we bought the business and have no regrets for doing it. It was a lot of fun and had a great time.
Great. Thank you, guys. There are a couple of announcements, and then we'll be turning it back over to our RI Director, Stephanie. The first announcement is please go to Rotary.works, and you can find all of the webinars that have been done. They are taped, and they will be there, and you are welcome to use those. We had several questions about the PowerPoint presentation. That PowerPoint presentation will be available if you go to Rotary.works and go to the resources page. It will be at the resources page. And the last thing, people wanted to know how to contact each of you. This is the contact information. It was a wonderful presentation, very informative, and we thank you, all three of you, very much. At this time, I'd like to turn it back to our RI Director, Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Claudia. And thank you, Terry. Thank you, Doug. And thank you, Rich, for a very insightful presentation. I hope that this discussion has given everyone watching some food for thought about business ownership. If you're still interested in starting your own business, take advantage of one of the Rotary Works career coaches. Rotary Works career coaching is available to any Rotarian or Rotaractor who would like more individualized mentoring. We have dozens of coaches ready to talk with you. Visit Rotary.works and look for the links in the right-hand column to request or to become a Rotary Works coach. I'd like to thank today's behind-the-scenes support who made the technical magic happen. Past District Governor Patrick Eakes from District 7690, and past District Governor Claudia Myrtle from District 6900. Another program of our Rotary Works initiative, the Impact Fund, launched just over 2 weeks ago. It's designed to support Rotarians and Rotaractors with a small one-time grant that can help ease financial issues during unanticipated career transitions. If there are other topics of interest that you would like to see in a future Rotary Works session, please put your ideas in the chat area. And finally, you're invited to get involved in our initiative. Rotary Works is about vocational service, one of our 5 avenues of service. If interested, please feel free to reach out to me or any member of the Rotary Works team, or visit Rotary.works for more information on how to get involved. Please mark your calendars for our upcoming events. Go to our website and register now for more valuable sessions in our career development series. You can see the programs listed there for May and June. And of course, we'll be adding more for July, August, and September. So thank you for joining us today. Please visit the Rotary Works website to read our monthly newsletters, examine the career resources section, sign up to be a coach or to request a coach, review the Impact Fund application or make a donation, review previous career strategy seminars, and of course, register for our next event in May. Remember, Rotary works. Goodbye.